everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Geek, and today we're going to be looking at where Breath of the Wild falls in the Zelda timeline. Now I know I'm a little late to the party on this one, but this time we're going to be changing it up a bit with some more things to look at. We're not only going to be using evidence from Breath of the Wild and all the other previous games, but also the teaser trailer that Nintendo released at their E3 2019 Direct. We're going to be using some of the things that in that trailer to see if we can make our result more definite. Now, if you've actually seen the trailer, you might think that there's not much evidence to help us with this theory. And you're right, but there is something there. Now, this video has got a lot of research gone into it, if looking through books of straight-up Zelda lore and looking up various Zelda YouTube theory videos, including some that aren't even closely related to this topic, because I get distracted and enjoy watching people like MatPat on Game Theory and Nintendo Black Crisis. Now, speaking of those two great theory channels, I will be using some of their ideas, their videos for this video. And don't worry, YouTube, I will credit them. And don't demonetize this video for plagiarism, please. Now, originally, I was going to do a simple, very in-depth, not-so-simple, overthought analysis of the new teaser trailer for the new sequel for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, until I thought I could do something different with it, and I found Nintendo Black Crisis' video on the Malice. I thought I could use some of his great information for this theory. Now, NBC states, and I quote, "These enemies are mindless. They only exist to kill and destroy. In other words, Malice has the ability to possess inanimate objects that do not have a mind of their own." End quote. So if this is correct, which it seems to be, looking at how he uses evidence from the game itself, that means that the Malice could possibly resurrect the mummified corpse that we see in Breath of the Wild sequel trailer. Speaking of the corpse, let's take a quick look to see at how we can identify what type of thing this is. So if we grab all of our shots from the sequel trailer and analyze it very carefully, then we can look at some of the small details and maybe find some clues to who or what this corpse belongs to. And right away, on the first close-up shot of the corpse, we can see that it is wearing jewelry that has the symbol of the Gerudo. And this is not the only time we see this clue. It is also wearing clothes that has the Gerudo symbol on them. This shows that the character has relation to the Gerudo tribe. Now, it doesn't seem that this corpse is a female, since all of the other shots that we see of it, it doesn't have certain anatomy pieces of the female human body. Yeah. So we can only assume that this corpse is a male from the Gerudo tribe. But I think two small details give way to who this corpse really belongs to. If we look at the hair of the corpse, we see that the hair is a distinct red. Now, you might be saying, well, gamer, if we look at most of the Gerudo from multiple games, including Breath of the Wild, the massive majority of the Gerudo have red hair. But that doesn't say anything. Well, I would have to say you make a fair point. If we look at Ocarina of Time and go to the Gerudo region, we see that the Gerudo guards all have red hair, but in Breath of the Wild as well. But I really think that this next clue really gives away who this corpse is. The yellow jewel on the corpse's forehead. That's right, if we look at the forehead, we can see a yellow jewel attached to the head with some golden jewelry of some type. If we look back at the designs for characters that have that specific feature, the first thing we see is, that's right, Ganondorf. Every time Ganondorf was in his Gerudo form, he had a yellow jewel on his forehead, including on this corpse. This can only mean that this is Ganondorf. Now, if we don't know which specifically from which game, so I looked through the trailer and found an extra specific detail about this corpse that specifies which Ganondorf we're looking at here. Now, I had to look at the trailer about 20 or more times to find this clue, and once I found it is when I finally realized that I could have used YouTube's speed feature to slow it down. That whole process could have taken a lot less time. But I guess I'm dumb and didn't realize that until after. But back to the point. We're looking at the Ganondorf from Twilight Princess. I found out because if you look very closely at where the glowing hand is holding the corpse, it is holding him by a deep scar. Yes, a large scar in the middle of his torso. And the only game where Ganondorf gets hurt in any way that gruesome enough to give him a scar in that spot is when one of the Six Sages pierced him there in Twilight Princess with the Sword of the Six Sages. Wow, such a creative name. To seal him away in the Twilight Realm. So that basically confirms it. This is the corpse of Ganondorf from The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. Moving on. So that means Breath of the Wild mostly likely falls in the child timeline. Since this sequel tells us that the Malice is reviving Twilight Princess's Ganondorf, and the sequel directly follows the Breath of the Wild timeline of events. But honestly, the more research I did, the less definite my answer got. Breath of the Wild can literally be at the end of any timeline. Like Matt Pat said in his video, link in the description, Breath of the Wild can be at the bottom of the Fallen Hero timeline. But after watching Nintendo Black Crisis' video on this topic, Breath of the Wild could be at the end of any or even all of the timelines. You see, one of Matt Pat's pieces of evidence is that the only Fallen Hero timeline has Lynels. Now, the reason this can be a good point, it doesn't really work because Breath of the Wild has enemies like Choo-Choos, Bokoblins, and Lizalfos. If we look, those are enemies that only appear in the adult and child timelines, but never in the hero's defeated timeline. So looking at the enemies' appearances isn't the best way to determine where Breath of the Wild's timeline placement is. And with that, neither is geography. Now, if you really look at the maps of the Zelda games, that is one of the most inconsistent things within the franchise. And yes, if we look closely, we can see that Breath of the Wild's map, it sort of lines up with the maps of the Fallen Hero timeline. Example, A Link to the Past. But the way Breath of the Wild makes its map is not only by locations, but by regions. None of the games in the Fallen Hero timeline rely of their maps through marking regions. Breath of the Wild may have some of the locations of the Fallen Hero timeline maps, but it also has certain landmarks that only appear in the other timelines. If we look, Breath of the Wild has Bridge of Hylia, which doesn't appear in any timelines, except in the Child Twilight Princess Great Hylia. Bridge, and only Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild have the Bridge of Eldin. Plus, the Arbiter's grounds ruins are located in the Gerudo Desert, and the other game that has this location is, yes, once again, Twilight Princess. Back to the topic of regions. The only games with region-based maps are Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, and yes, Twilight Princess. They all have the Lanayru, Eldin, and Faron regions. Why did it take me so long to pronounce Lanayru? Along with region-based maps and landmarks, there are also settlements that can be matched up with previous games from different timelines, specifically Kakariko Village. This can be found in Link to the Past from the Fallen Hero timeline, and yes, once again, Twilight Princess. Credit to Nintendo Black Crisis for that last point about Kakariko Village. So just from these two arguments, we see that Breath of the Wild could be in the Child Hero timeline from these arguments. One quite fine argument that MatPat made is that we see Ganon in his demonic form in Breath of the Wild, and that Ganondorf only appears in his human form in all other timelines, except it's not completely true. In the child timeline, we see that Ganon turns into his Dark Beast Ganon, which is both named just like Breath of the Wild Dark Beast Ganon, and looks extremely similar with the pig-like form and enormous tucks, like in Twilight Princess. Also in the child timeline, we see that Ganondorf takes his beast form, Ganon, in the final game of the child timeline, Four Swords Adventures. So MatPat's argument there doesn't really work anymore. So if we look at all the evidence we gathered in this video, the amazing help of research, and two great points by Nintendo Black Crisis, and some cool arguments by MatPat, we can probably conclude that The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild goes at the bottom of any of the timelines, really, because there's really nice evidence that we can say about Breath of the Wild can go at any of the three timelines. We see that there's evidence for each timeline, some stronger than others. Honestly, now that the trailer to the sequel of Breath of the Wild, knowing that it directly follows Breath of the Wild's timeline of events, makes me think that we are going to see a resurrection of Twilight Princess Ganondorf and continue with the child timeline. But that's just me. Let me know in the comment section below where you think Breath of the Wild falls in the Zelda timeline. But hey, that's just a theory. It's literally just a theory. I could be wrong, because it's just a theory. But anyway, I guess that wraps it up for this video. If you guys liked this video, like that smash button. Wait, hold up. I don't think that's how. Oh, yeah. Smash that like button. And while you're down there, click that subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you don't miss anything. But actually, guys, this video actually took a really long time to make, like about a month. This took a lot of research looking for the right images, music, scripting, and editing. And so a like would be greatly appreciated. Also, we just finished up our Kingdom Hearts 3 Critical Mode livestream series, so check that out in the playlist section of the channel. But once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.